back in the late 70s, there was this one name that just exploded all across the fashion world: Gia Carangi. Her story is this incredible mix of game-changing success and just staggering beauty, but it's also a story of really profound tragedy.
I mean, think about it. Gia Carangi was the face of the biggest fashion houses on the planet, and yet she was gone at just 26 years old, a victim of the AIDS epidemic. And that's really the heart of her story. So you have to wonder, right? How did one of the world's most successful models end up so tragically and so completely alone?
So to really understand the fall, you first have to understand the absolutely astonishing speed of her rise. This wasn't some slow and steady climb. It was like an explosion onto the scene.
Gia's story starts in Philadelphia. And the people who knew her best, they always pointed back to what they called a fractured childhood as the real root of the instability that would follow her. Her parents had a really violent marriage, and her mother actually left the family when Gia was only 11. That left this void that she apparently spent the rest of her life trying to fill.
Her rise was just unbelievably fast. I mean, look at this timeline. At just 17, she packs up and moves to New York. And by the end of her very first year there, she was already a well-established, in-demand model. Vogue itself even called her a scent meteoric.
And this right here, this was her ticket in, her official modeling card, repping top-tier agencies like Wilhelmina and Ford. This little piece of paper was basically her passport to the absolute highest levels of the fashion industry. And I think this quote from Gia herself just says it all. I didn't build into a model, I just sort of became one. It perfectly captures that feeling that it was all instantaneous, almost like it was an accident. It just happened to her.
So she makes it. She's at the absolute top of her game. But as we're about to see, the insane pressures that came with that fame, well, they started to reveal the cracks that had been there all along.
And look, when I say she was at the top, I am not kidding. Multiple international Vogue covers, Cosmopolitan, all in the span of just a couple of years. She wasn't just a model. For a time, she was the face of that entire era. And of course, that kind of fame came with a ton of money. At her absolute peak, Gia was pulling in $500,000 a year. That figure alone just shows you how incredibly in demand she really was.
But then, everything changed. In March of 1980, her agent, her mentor, and really a close friend, Wilhelmina Cooper, died. For Gia, who was already devastated, this loss was the catalyst. She just spiraled, and that's when she developed an addiction to heroin. And this quote from the legendary photographer Francisco Scavullo, it just gives you this heartbreaking firsthand look at what was happening. He remembers being on a shoot where he literally had to lay her down on a bed and comfort her through withdrawal. The professional world and her personal demons were starting to tragically collide. And that collision course with addiction, well, it started to tear down the incredible career she had built, piece by piece. And pretty soon, the signs became visible to the entire world.
Seriously, just think about this for a second. Her drug use got so bad that for a November 1980 Vogue shoot, the magazine reportedly couldn't even airbrush out all the needle marks on her arms. It was right there in the pages of Vogue, a public signal that something was terribly, terribly wrong.
Scavullo's assistant, a guy named Sean Burns, put it even more hauntingly. He said you could see it right there in her pictures, not just the physical stuff, but something deeper. He described an emptiness in her eyes. The light that had captivated the entire world was starting to go out.
And her professional collapse was just as fast as her rise. She left her home agency, signed with the legendary Ford models, only to be dropped just a few weeks later. And soon after that, the modeling offers just stopped coming. The very industry that had built her up so high had completely turned its back on her. After she left New York for good in 1983, Gia spent her final few years in this tragic struggle, so far away from the glamour and the flashbulbs of the fashion world. She died on November 18th, 1986. She was just 26 years old. Just let that number sink in for a second. An entire life, a revolutionary career, all over at only 26. Her official cause of death was AIDS-related complications, which were believed to have been contracted from a contaminated needle. And you have to remember the context of the 1980s. This made her one of the first famous women to die of the virus, a really tragic footnote in a much larger public health crisis. And this part, This, to me, is maybe the most devastating detail in her entire story. After a career where she was surrounded by the most famous and powerful people in fashion, not a single person from that world showed up to her funeral. She died completely isolated from the industry she had once ruled. But here's the thing. Even with that unbelievably tragic end, Gia's story didn't just disappear. Her influence on fashion, on culture, it still felt so strongly today. I mean, her impact was huge, and it spread out in so many different directions. She's widely considered one of the world's very first supermodels. Her look is often credited with starting that controversial heroin chic trend in the 90s. As an openly bisexual woman, she also became a powerful lesbian icon. And her influence was so strong that a young Cindy Crawford was even nicknamed Baby Gia. And her story, it continues to be told. You've got the biography Thing of Beauty, the incredible HBO film Gia with Angelina Jolie, and several documentaries that have made sure her life and her struggles are not forgotten by new generations. So at the end of the day, you're left with this question, right? Was Gia Carangi a revolutionary fashion icon who changed the industry forever? Or is her story just a tragic cautionary tale about the darkest side of fame and addiction? The truth, of course, is that she was both.